Barry McGuigan's with us. I'm not sure how many pages. It's a big book. How long did that take you to write?
Year and 4 months, thereabouts.
Any experience prior to that of writing?
No, I write
The column?
my column every week.
You do that yourself?
I do it myself. Well, I do it with a guy called Kevin Garside, who articulates my thoughts better than anybody I've ever worked with before. It took about 3 years to find the right guy, but I think it's a very popular column. We get on very well, and he's someone I enjoy doing it with, but I dot the I's and cross the T's, and when my copy is read back we make many changes. That's the way I like to do it, because I like to be involved in everything, because ultimately it's what you say. It's, if it it has to be right. So, and I have my own style, and I'm glad you like the book. I'm glad you like it. It's when does somebody write a book? When does somebody write an autobiography?
Well, that was the next question, I suppose. After all this time, why now?
Well, you see, do you write it when you're 20 and you haven't really got a perspective on life?
No, you don't. Not in my opinion.
No, or do you write it when you're 70 and you can't remember anything?
No, you write it. You write it when you're your age.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to then revert to text, and you have to revert to stuff that was written in the paper. You can't remember detail. Whereas now I can still remember what it feels like to take a punch in the mouth. I can still remember how difficult it was to make weight, and how frustrating it was to spar
weight, especially when the machines are faulty, as happened against Cruz.
Yeah,
and that gets a mention in the book.
That's right. Stepping on the scales, and it because all the preliminary fighters. What actually happened in that case was I got on the scales, which you would normally do an hour beforehand. In those days they had balance scales, not electronic scales like they have now, and the scales registered me about I'd say 7 ounces, 8 ounces under the weight. So I had an orange. A little bit of orange, it's only this much, but just to take the dryness away. And I came back an hour later, and everybody else had weighed in, and all the hullabaloo, and I'd done my press and done my little bit of TV and whatever. And when we got back on the scales were actually slightly off balance, so we had to get them redone. And the two of us, and apparently Cruz actually weighed under beforehand, and then slightly over as well, so we had to get them recalibrated, and then we were fine. But that's the biggest issue in professional boxing, making weight.
But you talk about what you can remember. Again, I said to Andy this morning, the only reason he hasn't read this, by the way, is because I nicked it. There's only one in the building, and I took it.
You
last
never
week.
gave me one.
So
no, exactly. I'm very
that's
parsimonious.
not his fault.
And forget about the Scotsman. But the Irish are every bit as parsimonious.
When you talk about remembering what happened, each and every big fight is written here blow by blow.
But just sear it into your memory.
Do you still remember that? Do you
Every-
remember taking the punches?
I remember you don't remember every
Round by
single
round,
detail.
blow by blow, virtually.
But you remember the salient points in the fight. You remember the points, for example, against Pedrosa, you remember the 7th round. I had practiced this punch over and over and over again, and we called it the Smithborough Special, my brother and I, because that was our little code, the Smithborough Special. So I threw a right hand to the body, he tucked his elbow in to block it, I threw it again, he blocked it again, and the third time I showed the body halfway through the punch, I threw it to the head, and I caught him not on the chin but on the cheekbone, and he went down, and 27,000 people jumped to the feet, and the noise was just deafening. And I remember running to my corner, the neutral corner, and the referee starting the count, and I looked down at my own corner, and in those circumstances...
Just explain why you went quickly to the neutral corner.
Well, you run quickly to the neutral corner because then the count is taken up much quicker. Well, it's not quicker. As soon as he hits the floor, the timekeeper will start... One, and he'll hit the canvas like that in the corner, or the referee is not allowed to start the count himself. He must pick it up with the timekeeper.
Right.
So the idea of getting to the corner is to give him less time to recover. So I ran to the neutral corner and looked down at my own corner, for a bit of sort of sagacious advice. Settle down now, throw a left hook or a right hand or something. And they're going, yeah! They're jumping up and down. They were doing what the crowd were doing. They were going bonkers. So I just thought, right, okay, I'll get one chance here. And I tried a big sweeping right hand round the side and missed him. And I knew he wasn't that badly hurt. And then he hit me with a couple of punches near the end of the round and done that. He haven't got me yet, mate.
Did he?
And I'd hurt him again in the 9th, had him out on his feet on the 13th, and like the laudable champion that he was, he came back at me. He hurt me more in the 14th round, but that was, so you remember those details. I remember, for example...
Do you feel them? Do you still feel them?
My God. I remember, this is the truth, in the Laporte fight, which was the fight that got me the world title fight. CBS, or I'm not sure, NBC actually in America had followed me a load of times, and Sugar Ray Leonard came in with... Tim Ryan and Gil Clancy, 2 old sages, to commentate on my fight against Laporte, and that was the one that really was going to get me the world title fight and get me proved to the American TV that I was the real McCoy. And we needed a guy that could punch, we needed a guy with credibility, and he was a Puerto Rican. He just lost the title to the great Wilfredo Gomez, and I was doing everything right, and I was ahead, and Harry Gibbs was the referee, and I was beating him, and it was a tremendous fight. I think that was the best fight I ever had. And in the 9th round, I was coming forward with a jab, and he beat me to the punch, and he hit me I hit him with the first jab, snapped his head back, and I thought I'd try it again, and he came over the top with the right hand, and he nearly took my head off. And honest to God, this is the truth, Andy. Honestly, I remember.
See that phrase, by the way, just as you're speaking, that's how I knew you'd written it, because that little phrase there, honest to God, comes up again and again and again. It's written the way Barry talks.
And I'm telling you, Richard, he hit me, and when I was a kid, I used to go down to my mother had a grocery shop. Next door was the chemist, and then after that, it was Cecil Chapman's private house, and then there was Mrs. Keenan, who had a toy shop. Right.
Brilliant.
And I used to go down as a kid, and she would say, oh, look at these toys, and I would go up to my mother and said, Mom, can I buy this? And she said, no, you can't. We couldn't afford it, 8 of us and all the rest. I thought when he hit me with that right hand, I was in Mrs. Keenan's shop, and I thought, what am I doing in Mrs. Keenan's shop? I swear to God, it took me about 10 seconds before the fog cleared, and in the meantime, right hands and left hooks were whizzing over my head. But
if that was your best fight, Pedrosa, you start the book by it's brilliant, Andy. I'll give it to you. You describe everything from the moment you left the hotel to getting into the ring with Pedrosa. Stop.
Yeah.
And then the book starts again in the beginning. Well, what gave you that idea?
Well, the idea was I wanted to get people interested at the start of any sort of denouement or story or narrative. You have to get them interested in what to remind them of what was. Let's be honest, that was the best night.
That was the most famous.
That was
fight.
the most famous fight, and 20 million people watching on television. 20 million people. Think about that nowadays, and we watch TV differently than we did in those days. We have all the family watch it together, whereas now we've got two or three TVs in the house, and they're watching Soccer AM, or they're watching MTV, or they're watching EastEnders. Nobody watches it together. Those days they all watch it together.
You've got 3 subscriptions there. Yeah, you are anyway.
Well, no. So what I'm saying is that was the night. So what I had to tell people was, this is what it felt like. I'm sitting in the dressing room. It wasn't that big. It wasn't that big a thing coming in, because I waited till the show had started. Most people were in their seats, and I came in and I was in the home dressing room. Superstition and all that. I want to be, and you could hear the ground, because they were in the stands above us. They stood on and they were stamping the ground. And the noise built and built and built and built. And then the floor manager walked in and said, right, let's go. And so I'd warmed up and stretched and got ready, and I put a bit of oil on your body to help sort of the punches slip off and that sort of thing. And then I put a bit of Vic in my nose to make my breathing clear. And then gloved up, bandaged up, and you're trying to keep cool, and you hear this noise, boom, 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 and it's just getting louder and louder and louder. I mean, listen, I'm talking to the converted here, and you walk out and this wall of sound hits you.
Yeah, well, let's not walk out just yet. And there was one other thing that happened in the dressing room which really wound him up.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we come back, because you did lose the plot a little bit, didn't you?
It didn't half.
11:15 it is. You're listening to Keys and Gray on TalkSport with Barry McGuigan, I'm delighted to say.